Welcome back to another episode of the Missoula podcast. Stephen, good morning.
Good morning, Brando.
Hey, Chris Cochran, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Hey, how was your weekend?
Good, man. Weather is
Spring is here.
spring. Nice.
This is great.
Sunshine.
Yeah, grass is starting to turn green. It's amazing.
It's almost boating season.
Almost boating season. Which, hey, way to set that up. Way to tee that up. You see what he did there, Chris? Boating season is here.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, so Chris, before we let the audience know what you do and about your life story, when's the last time you've been seasick?
It's a good question. As I feel like as I get older, I get sick. I haven't puked. In 23 years, I've never puked. I've watched a lot of pukers, though.
Never puked.
Nope.
Even
No.
that very first.
Get me on a small boat out on Flathead and a 3-foot, 4-foot chop. Yeah, probably. But big ships.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you can handle it. So what do you do? What is your job title? Give us a breakdown, essentially, of your day-to-day job.
Okay. Short answer, I'm a mechanic on a massive 900-foot ship with 2 3-story main engines, about 15,000 horsepower apiece. For all you diesel nuts, there's 7-cylinder slow-speed diesel engines running at about 127 RPMs. And pushing a big 900-foot oil tanker.
I lost him at mechanic.
I know, right? Yeah. Wrenching on massive engines is just super fun. Every day is different. We have an engine crew. Let's see, it's the chief engineer, the first engineer. We got a second engineer, does the fuel. 2 third engineers, they do lube oil and electrics. And then you've got a junior engineer that kind of runs the oilers. And then we have a utility. And so I'm an oiler. In the industry, we're known as QMEDs, which is a qualified member of the engine department, or an engineman. And so that's what we do.
So where do you guys typically sail from? Where do you take off? Where do you go? What's your general route?
Yep. So we pick up oil from the North Slope, which ends in Valdez, Alaska. And we pick up the oil there and we transport it to ports along the West Coast, Hawaii, and sometimes overseas, but that's very rare. So Barbers Point, Hawaii, which is sad because you look at Oahu and you can't really touch it. You might be able to go in for 4 hours or whatever, but sometimes it's not even worth it. A couple of refineries in Long Beach area, San Francisco, Puget Sound, and that's our main route.
Got it. So you're cruising the Pacific.
Yep.
Okay. How far away from the shore are you guys cruising at?
About 200, 300 miles offshore.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they don't want us anywhere near for obvious reasons. I pass by Bly Reef probably every 2 weeks. So if everybody remembers the Exxon Valdez, not really a happy story, but it changed the industry after that. And now we're just these massive ships. We have a double hull, so ballast tanks on the outside. So, but there's always that chance.
Of course.
Yeah.
So are you in an engine room like all day long? Like how long are your shifts?
Yeah.
And how hot is it?
We
I
work.
know, I picture just like the inferno, just sweating.
I know,
and
right? The old
grease
steam engines or coal or fired or whatever.
Right.
So yes, in the engine room, I have literally forced myself to go outside. You sometimes forget. We work 12-hour days, 7 days a week for up to 3 months. We are outside a lot, but there are days when you get clicking away and you got jobs to do. And then you remind yourself like, man, I need some sunlight. I got to go outside. I got to go outside and get some fresh air, as it's not really hot in the wintertime. It does get hot in the summers. Obviously we're down there with engines pumping away, and Singapore is probably the hottest. It gets about 110 down the engine room on top of just humid air being pumped in with the intakes. So you're just roasting, and then we have to wear FR clothing, which is just like a thicker material. It's fire retardant clothing all day, every day until we get to Singapore.
So, I mean, you've been doing this for 23 years, and you said 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week for 3 months at a time.
Yeah.
Are those days, I imagine to me, it sounds really exhausting. Is it completely exhausting and you're done with 12 hours and you go to sleep and get up and do it again? Or is this like, hey, you're kind of you're on a cruise. You work for 12 hours and then you're just chilling on the top deck with a drink with an umbrella in it? Like what's life look like outside of the 12 hours?
Man, I really wish we had drinks with umbrellas in it. So we work 12-hour days. And then when I'm finished, we have Starlink now, which the technology these days is just amazing. So you got a lot of guys who just flip through Instagram and Facebook all night. I try to block my time, talk to the family. I flip through social media just a little bit, but it annoys me so much that I just kind of get rid of it. And then I read and try to get to bed around, 2100, 2130 or
What's
9:30
Okay,
for
thank
the
you.
folks. Yeah. So I read and then I go to bed and wake up and try to just get my day going by either reading or just doing some workout stuff. We've got a full gym on board, which is really nice. All the food you could ever eat. We have a full freezer full of ice cream, which I try to stay away from. Sometimes you just gotta grab a ice cream sandwich every now and then. And then we go to our plan of the day meeting, which is at 06. Usually runs 20 minutes, and then we're already into our day. And then we take a break and start the day.
Wild.
Yeah.
What's the thing that you love most about your job, and what's the most challenging part? I think I already know that answer, but
Yeah. So the challenging would obviously be away from the family.
How long are you gone at a time? You leave Missoula, you're
About 2.5 to 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
and then you're home for
I'm home for 2 months, which is fun. And it's
Okay.
great. I get solid time with my wife and kid.
Yeah.
I get solid time with family and friends. And then it's just getting right back into it, which there's so many ups and downs throughout the year. Like going to the ship's a bummer. You're like, oh man, it just sucks leaving Missoula. I always take a picture of Missoula from the gate that I'm at just to kind of have something from home.
Yeah.
sure.
And then the most exciting time, obviously, is the last picture when I'm on the launch going into the shore with my bags. That's the best.
And Steven asked a question. What do you love the most about your job?
I love, we briefly talked about this before. I love the views. I think the views for me and just being out in the middle of nowhere and looking around the horizon and not seeing a building for forever, for days. It literally takes us from Valdez down to Long Beach, typically is about 7 days. So you're not seeing any land for 7 days. And that's on an average trip. Now, when we go to Singapore, it's 30 days. We don't see, we're roughly about 1,000 miles from any point of land at one, for a couple of days, we're about 1,000 miles away from land. So we go back to, what the guys did, Shackleton and Columbus and all those shippers, and just think about now, it's just incredible to see the stars. And I think that's probably the most exciting.
Yeah, you get detached from society in a good way.
Yes. It's crazy. And then you get immersed in it when you come home. And it takes me about a week to come back and get back into reality. There's a lot going on, people everywhere and traffic and all that stuff. And it is really weird to come home. So I need about a week to decompress, and it's wild.
Is it the same the other way? Once you get on the ship, you have to adjust to
You do.
the quiet. And,
Yeah. Yep. Getting into just the focus on, I'm here to work. I'm here to do a job, do it to the best of my abilities. I've got a handful of buddies that I work with. We're always constantly moving. We don't have the same crew every time. So everybody's coming in and out kind of throughout the 3-month period. So that's kind of fun. You see your buddies, and if you have a good solid crew, your work can go really well. We're getting a lot of new folks now. So that kind of adds to
changes the culture.
It changes yeah, it's just, it's a lot.
Training and
Yeah. So trying to do your job and train at the same time.
Sure. So take me back to the beginning. Where are you from? When did you first get interested in working with your hands, probably working on engines? And how in the heck did you find this line of work?
That's a very good question. So grew up in Clarkston, Washington. If you hit Highway 12 and head over, it's about 3.5, 4 hours west. And was getting in a lot of trouble. I was getting into a lot of trouble, and I was headed down a road I knew I didn't want. And my buddy's mom, one day, she came down with a classifieds in her hand, and she looked at both of us and she goes, "You guys are going to Alaska." And I'm like, "What am I going to do up in Alaska?" She goes, "You're getting out of town and you're going to go work on a fish factory ship. I'm going to take you up there on a Friday or whatever and do the application process." And that's what we did. She took us to Seattle, and we got on the ship and we left. And that was literally the first time I've ever done anything outside of the Pacific Northwest. Got on this ship, and I think, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was what I still believe. And it was just the views and just this rawness of being offshore and being a sailor. And when we started, I was working 18-hour days, 7 days a week, sometimes 22 hours a day. You want to talk about being a robot. And I don't know what I loved about it. I don't know. Maybe it was just the newness of it. And
what kind of fish were you guys catching?
so we were the mothership to the crab fleet, cod, salmon, herring. We did it all. If anybody knows the Deadliest Catch, I knew the Deadliest Catch boats before it was even a blip on Discovery's radar. It kind of ruined all that. But anyway, I still talk to guys that are up there. The culture has changed in the fishing fleet, and sometimes I miss it, and then I realize what they do now, and I just kind of don't want anything to do with it. But I spent 8 years up there, and it was a blast. I still have a lot of friends from up there, and the ship is now scrapped. The first ship that I started on, they took it to India and put it up on the beach and scrapped it. And just got a bunch of digitized 8mm tapes that I had from back then, and I just got it back. And I was looking through videos and photos from the early 2000s, and it's just wild where I came from to where I am now. I should be a captain or a chief engineer, but I got stingy with my time off and just didn't want to go to the courses that we had to do that. I got all the sea time, and you go to class. There's academies out there if anybody's interested in that kind of stuff. There's Maine Maritime, Mass Maritime, Cal Maritime. You come out of high school and you go to a 4-year college, and you come out as an officer, and you can come out either in the engine or the deck side. Excuse me. And it's an interesting life if that's what people want to do.
What type of personality does it attract?
That is a really good question. It wildly ranges. You got some strange characters, and maybe it's because they can't handle society, or you get your troublemakers. And nowadays
those darn kids from Clarkson, Washington.
Yeah,
seriously, there was a group of people that I was working with, and they would pull from, say, Great Falls and Missoula, Spokane, Seattle, Clarkston, those areas. Yeah. And you were getting a lot of rough folk, but a lot of interesting, good people too.
Sure.
I tell a lot of people I work with, this is one of the most interesting careers because you can work with such a diverse group of people from all over the world, and traveling all over the world with those people is really interesting. You get to hear and see a lot of different cultures, and it's made me who I am.
How'd you end up in Missoula?
Jill, my wife. Yeah. Her family's from here. She went to school here, and I showed up 2001, and I just never really looked back. I've been to Clarkston maybe a handful of times, and I just love it here. It was the easy choice. Plus with the support system with her and Cully.
Let's hit pause right there on your story and hop into our rapid 5, 7 questions, whatever Steven wants to call them. Let's start with the easy one. Easy question, Chris. What zip code do you live in?
59803.
That's the best zip code in Missoula.
It is.
Hands down.
Chris, what is your favorite book?
I would have to say Knights of Ice, which talks about the crab fleet and a lot of stories in the crab business.
Beautiful.
Do you like seafood?
I love seafood.
Are you a seafood guy?
I think there was a time where I ate it so much I actually became allergic to shellfish, and then that went away. It was really weird. I blew up like a balloon and just about died a couple of times, but it was worth it. I mean, those people that eat seafood now. So yeah.
When you are back in Missoula, what's your go-to coffee shop?
Go-to is Good Americano.
Good Americano.
Yep.
There's a lot of
Popular.
Yeah. Probably
Popular.
going to get whacked for that when I step out of here or people hear the podcast, but
It's all right.
So you obviously have to make it up to your wife when you're gone for so long. Where do you take her out for dinner? Your favorite restaurant on a date?
Zootai.
Zootai.
Yep.
So good.
Amen.
Zootai.
So good. 2001, you said you came to Missoula for the
Yeah.
first time. What is your earliest memory of Missoula, Montana?
Wow. Earliest memory is living in the apartments up by where we live, and probably just going and hiking the Bitterroot Mountains and being amazed at how much hiking you can do here. So I think the hiking. One of my first memories was hiking the Bitterroots.
Beautiful. A weird place. Missoula has been called that many times. What's the weirdest thing about Missoula to you?
Man, what is the weirdest thing?
But you've seen a lot of weird
It's-
things. So maybe you're like,
I know, right? Yeah. And gosh, the weirdest thing is, wow, you guys stumped me. The weirdest thing is the traffic schemes around here. How about that? I think that's the weirdest thing
That's
to me.
very weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Malfunction junction, and then they tried to fix it and it's still malfunctioned. I don't know.
Got weird. Yeah.
it is weird.
Yeah. On the contrary, what do you love the most about Missoula?
I love the outdoor life. And there was an article years ago where this guy was talking about what he did in a normal day, and it was taking his kids to school, and kids got out of school, they went for ice cream, and then they packed the raft and floated the Blackfoot, and then they showed up, and then they hiked Mount Sentinel and went for a little mountain bike ride up the Rattlesnake, and that was all within one day. I mean, it's ridiculous,
awesome.
and I love it.
You know, you hear about the people in like LA where they talk about, oh, they can go to the beach or then be in the mountains within an hour. Like, we don't have the beach, but we have the same thing.
Yeah.
We can be on the river or,
Yeah,
up mountains hiking, like
Yep.
all within an hour.
yeah,
Pretty,
it's amazing.
pretty
I love
special for sure.
All right. You passed the blazing 7 questions. Good job. Yeah. Now we'll jump back into your story.
it. All right.
You said you came here in 2001. You met Jill. How did you have time to meet a girl in the midst of working up in Alaska? And how did that all work?
Well, yeah. And how'd you sell her on the idea of, hey, we should be in a relationship? And oh, by the way, I'm gone for 8 months.
So here's
Thank you.
this is going to twist your brains.
Okay.
Jill and I actually met on the factory ship. Yeah.
Oh.
Really?
She was doing a summer gig, and yeah, we ended up, it took a little while, and I think I remember, she remembers it better, but I was like hanging on a rail, and I'm like, so what are you doing when we get back to Seattle? Super weird. And it worked. It worked. So I think she stuck around, and then I got her a job on the crew, and we were working and living together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2 years. And
Whoa, talk about putting your relationship to the test.
I know. So maybe that's why we work so well. It's crazy. And yeah, so she came back home, and I think she was working for Yellowstone National Park. So she had her thing back home, and I had my career that I figured I was going to just stay in. And yeah, so it didn't really take much to coax her into being in a relationship. We just made it work. And she's special in that regard, where not many people in my industry can hang on to women like that.
I mean, hearing your
That's-
story like blows my mind. Like, I can't even begin to relate or
Yeah.
wonder how you guys do it. But this is the norm. This is normal
It
for
is
you guys.
normal.
It's very normal.
Yeah.
How do you, I know you mentioned like when you're on the boat, you got Starlink, you're checking in with the family kids, but how do you manage a household? How do you guys live life? Like, really, do you just have to be so intentional when you come home that it's just family time? And does that change life for your wife and son? Is it dad's home? Life now changes for us.
That's
as
really
well.
good. They don't like change. I try to come home and I try to be the dad and the husband.
Yeah.
And I sometimes have to pull back. I can't do that. They have their ways of going through life, and I don't want to ruin what they have. And, they're just kind of in the motion. Jill works full time. Cully goes to school, and they just make it work. she's a saint for doing what she does. She takes care of a lot, almost everything.
Yeah.
And then I'm just there to help wherever I can. So when I'm home, I kind of take over on taking Cully to school and helping her whatever she needs to do and let her kind of chill out for a couple of months, and then they're right back in.
Do you feel like you're on vacation when you're back home, or is it a whole nother set of to-do lists
It's a
and
whole
household
other,
projects?
Yeah, household projects. I try to. Jill's really good about letting me go do what I want to do. So Moab and do some stuff in Colorado. And so I take those trips, and she's really good about, hey, I know you work offshore and want to do these things, and you're go do them.
Yeah.
So it works.
You have to have a little bit of play
Yes.
in order to decompress.
Yeah. And I sometimes feel bad about that. I
Sure.
gone for 3
Right.
months, and then I want to come home and go spend a week down in Moab. And I kind of feel bad about that, but I've learned to just roll with it, and whatever we need to do to make it work, we do.
What's been the challenge with your son of the relationship side? When you come back, has there been any basically period where you guys have to figure out your relationship again?
I thought so. And then when I think about it, I think we're pretty good about that.
Mhm.
Every morning I'm texting, every night I'm texting, or we're FaceTiming. So I try to be involved still as I'm gone.
Which that's got to be nice, because I mean, years ago there was limited communication. So now to be
Absolutely.
able to check in, how's your day, how's school,
Yep.
how'd that test go?
And making sure I do that. So we're in this, so excuse me. So we have that communication.
It's probably the reverse. Years ago, it's like, oh, dad's calling. Now it's, oh, he's calling again.
I know.
Right.
And there's times
You're
where I
interrupting
text,
his day. Yeah.
I am. Well, I'm hanging out with my buddies. I'm like, all right, well, I just want to talk to you. I only ask for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Come on. I think it's good. As long as I come home, I know this isn't growing a kid to be a good human being. Dad has to be there. And I understand that. I think we do a pretty good job. There's still a part of me that wants to be home and make sure that through his high school years that I'm home. If you tell him all the time, if there's anything, do not hesitate in texting or calling or whatever.
Mhm.
Let's make sure that we get, you need to talk to dad. I'm here no matter what. And the company's really good about that too. If you need to go take 10 minutes or half hour or whatever, take as much time as you need to make sure your family comes first.
Sure. They don't want to lose employees.
Absolutely. So they've done a really good job at taking care of our fleet.
I'm assuming, Chris, that there's some financial benefits to working for the company that you work for. But how many times has it crossed your mind, man, I'm just going to go get a normal job in Missoula. This is just too hard.
Yeah.
I mean, does that happen often? And have you been close to leaving?
Yep. Left probably 2 times. I've worked in Missoula twice. Made it, I think each time, maybe 1 year, and then 2 years was the second time I tried to do that. Worked for a geotech firm here as a field technician for Tetra Tech. And I was traveling to Great Falls for wind farms and traveling down the Bitterroot for road projects. And I got to the point where I was like, all right, the money isn't all that great. It's a struggle living here in Missoula and trying to make a life here. You guys know it's sacrifice.
Correct.
But then there's that other side where do I want to fixate my life on money? I think at some point, and it's getting to that point more so now as we need to be with our families, that, I think about that quite a bit. Like, man, what am I doing? I've got a lot of experiences that I've done throughout my life, but then I think back to them, like all of them require traveling, like all the things that I want to do. I love heavy equipment. I love cranes. I can do all that stuff. But it's traveling again. So do I stay where I'm at and get the 2 months off and have that 4 or 5 month block of time with my family? Or do I come back and try to be home? Where's that balance? So
This might be a difficult question to answer on the spot. So if you need a minute, that's totally cool.
okay.
I would imagine life on the sea, 3 months at a time, there's probably a lot of metaphors we could use or analogies, life lessons. What is something that being out on the sea for 3 months has taught you about life?
There's a motto that I've ran by since about 2002, since I first read it. And it was smooth sea doesn't make a skilled mariner. I love that one because it's not just in the sense of being offshore, it's in life. You have to have a little bit of struggles to be a good person, and you got to go through some ups and downs.
I'm sure you've seen some ups and downs on the sea, some waves. Have you had any of those like iconic movie scenes where just the waves are crashing over the boat and you're scared for your life and everyone's screaming and it's just total chaos?
Yes. My first trip. My first trip, 1999. It was king crab. We were on our way home, and we tried to beat a storm and get into Indian Pass, which is up in the Juneau area. You're going to probably go through it. And we saw it on the radar. We were so close, and then we got hammered by 100-mile-an-hour winds and 50-foot seas. And 2 days we were just, I was scared. I was, it was my first time seeing something like that. Yeah. And I thought, man, this is it. This is how I'm going to go. And we made it through.
What do you do in that? Like, all I see is like the Disney version. Like, you grab a bucket and start throwing water over, or a mop. Like, what really happens in those moments?
Hang on, and you get no sleep. Everybody's crabby. I believe we broke some equipment, and you're just punching into these waves, and it's like hitting a brick wall every couple of minutes.
So you get inside, get indoors. You're not out on the deck.
Indoors, usually close the decks. If you have to, you better be holding on to a rail. Back then, safety really wasn't all that there.
Crazy.
Like now we close.
And you never threw up.
I never threw up.
23 years.
Nope. Now I didn't. It doesn't feel good. It's a 3-4 days of storms is not. It just beats your body up. And now I'm getting older. It doesn't. It hits different. That's for sure.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, fascinating. I mean, you were Deadliest Catch before Deadliest Catch, doing that kind of stuff. If there's, I'm always thinking about young people. I don't know why, just trying to help them navigate life.
Absolutely.
If there's kids that are maybe struggling, they're not real good in the classroom, or they're getting in trouble, and they want to go down this trek of following what you've done.
Yeah.
Number one, would you recommend it? And number two, how would they go about it?
I would recommend it. I have this thing where I'm like, don't do it, and I don't want my kid doing that because he's going to be gone all the time. But then I think about all the places I've been to on this earth, and all the experiences that I've had and all the friends that I've made. And I'm like, yeah, I would do it. Yeah.
Your Instagram is fascinating.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. It's pictures that none of us will ever be able to take or see of the sky and the stars and
that's what I try to emulate when I'm gone, like just sharing with my friends. There's a lot of things that I get messages all the time, like, man, that is incredible. I couldn't believe what it would be like to be out there seeing that or doing that. Or it's just a different industry, right? We don't think about the things that we have, the cups, the tables. 90% of everything we have in the US is transported by ship. So when you think about the shipping in the old times, spices and all the products that were transported throughout the world, it was all done by shipping. Now it looks a little bit different. You click a button and in 5 seconds, it's on a truck in Japan headed to the ship, and then it's in a container and it's here, 4 days later, and then whatever. But yeah, it's really interesting. I love sharing that side of.
I'll post more pictures of Reserve Street for you, just so you feel
Thank
at home
you. Yes,
you're gone,
absolutely.
so
I can't wait to. Can you post it when they take it down to 2 lanes?
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
And your son does well with you being gone, holidays, birthdays.
I think when we go back to just normal, I think that's just what we're used to. I was here for the time that I was with Tetra Tech. I was home for 2 years, and that was solid 2 years. And then after that, I think he's just used to it. I always ask him too. I always make sure I'm like, hey, are we good?
Yeah.
Are we good? And he's like, yeah, I'm good.
Do you see yourself doing this?
Right.
Long term? How many more years do you have in you? Is this?
I'd like to say that I'm there till retirement.
Yeah.
But then I guess that just factors into how he does. If there's a time where I see where he's struggling with dad being gone and mom struggling to take care of a 17, 16-year-old kid or whatever in high school, whatever that looks like, I'll come home. And there's always an option if anybody's got any jobs back home.
You're taking.
Yeah. They'll run a boat up in Glacier or something. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what that looks like. I always want to come home, and I would love to be home with my family. I just don't know what that looks like. I always try to say that I know safety and security and financially stable is not really an excuse, but I just, they take really good care of the family, whether it be monetary, health.
Well, and again, I'm asking these questions because it's so abnormal to me, and I just keep realizing this is normal. This is normal to you. I
ask those questions to myself literally all the time. So I'm doing a podcast in my mind literally all the time. Like, what are you doing? I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do.
But what I love about it too, Chris, is, we go to our 9-to-5 jobs or whatever and go through the motion with our kids. But when you come home, it's like intentional time.
Yeah.
Or when you're gone, it's
absolutely.
You're probably more intentional with your kid than we are with our kids.
Yeah.
And it's a blessing in disguise, I think, in a lot of ways. Now there's distance, but
it is. And I agree with you. There were times where it almost felt like when Cully was younger, we were taking him to daycare, feeding him food and like shoving him into bed and taking a bath and all this stuff. And you're like just pushing everything to get life back in order. And I thought to myself, is that, there has to be that balance.
Mm-hmm.
So is this 4 or 5 months home a blessing where we just have a block of time where I can just hang out with him and do it? What do you want to do? Take a day off from school. Mom doesn't like that, but I'm like, hey,
you're the fun
dad's
guy.
home. I'm the fun guy. Let's go.
If a young person wanted to pursue this route, where do they start?
Start by checking out, looking into those maritime colleges. One of the things that I didn't know about when I was growing up in this industry was I didn't know those were available to me. There's this Professional Mariner magazine, and in the back of it, there's a list of jobs and like all the schools you can go to. And oddly, when I was looking at that on the ship I first started working on, those pages weren't there. I found out those pages were there when I went to another ship. And I'm like, hey, where is this? We found out that they rip them out. They were ripping them out so the guys wouldn't leave. And I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't know I could go to an academy for this.
Wow.
So you could literally, instead of just going to your Gonzagas or your University of Montanas, you can go to a maritime institute, Kings Point. There's a ton of them, and the possibilities are endless.
Mm-hmm.
Come out and you can be a reservist in the Navy while you're working offshore. And there's, I've got shipmates that do that. When they're working on the ship, they're on the ship, but when they're off, they hook up with the Navy and they do a 6-month deployment doing whatever, and they can just build on their careers. And you don't necessarily have to be on a ship either. You can be logistics or some part of the, integral part of the ship ashore. We've got a headquarters in Houston, and we've got people that are laterally moving over into the land-based jobs, supporting the ships.
It's fascinating. It's like this whole part of the world that don't even realize exists. Like, it's there, it's happening. There's ships and cargo, but you just don't even think about it.
Yeah, it just happens, right? So
it's a huge economy that we don't even think about.
Yeah, the tugboats, the pilot boats, everything that's incorporated with that.
How many people on your ship?
So we have roughly anywhere from 27 to 30 crew on board.
And then how many people, like you said, were logistics to make it go from Alaska to Hawaii?
Yeah, so tankers are different. We have operations, and then we have our, we have our headquarters in Houston, but our operations, they wheel and deal the oil and the supply and demand and send the ships where we're going to go, and they're watching the weather. And, 10 minutes later, a ship breaks down and they're on their way into port. We have to, get the other ships kind of situated to get that moving. So, a couple thousand, and that's drilling, and they're worldwide. And then we've taken on some other parts of I think we're a few hundred for just us. So
like in my mind, I'm visioning like a cruise ship mentality. I know that's way off, but do you guys have like a buffet, a chef, or are you guys going in the kitchen and like just whipping up your own Easy Mac for dinner? Like, are you on your own?
Some of the ships, some of the companies I worked for, yes.
Okay.
We have a full steward department, which is a chief steward, a cook baker, and then a mess person. And they can bust out some 5-star meals, or they can bust out some 1-star meals. It just all depends. But the cook baker's dangerous, because not only do we have the chips, cookies, and the ice cream and the soda machines, we've got a cook baker that can bust out some 5-star desserts. And we have a gym, but there's some times where I go all out. And then I come home and I try to.
Your wife's like, okay, 20 pounds heavier.
Exactly. So that's on me. I have a lot to, when I get off work, there's sometimes where you're just so tired and you're like, man, how about a Reese's peanut butter cup and a soda?
I don't know if you have more questions, even. I got 2 questions for you, Chris. One, because you've been out there and you've seen it, is the earth flat?
No. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I had a shipmate way back in the day. We got in an argument over this. Why I was arguing with a flat earther, I have no idea. When you first see a ship coming over the horizon, you see the house first, and then you see the whole ship. And so I tried to ask him, like, how can you be a sailor and be a flat earther? And he started asking me questions, and I'm like, all right, I think we're done with this conversation. You can't argue with a flat earther. It's just not something you should do, but it is round.
But no, on a more serious note, do you have a great story from being at sea you could leave us with? I don't know if you ran into pirates or sunken treasure, but you've got to have some great stories of just
pirates.
The day that should have been that wasn't, or ended up being great. Like,
nobody wants to steal a bunch of oil.
No, when we're in those pirate waters, we're empty. So we're super high, and, they have ladders and stuff that they use. So we're not really a high risk target for that, but we are prepared for that. And we do stand watches for that.
Is it like pirate training?
We do. Yeah. Well, we're only allowed fire hoses, which
right.
I wish we could have a, set of special ops guys on board with guns, but the whole tanker thing, cannons or something. Yeah, we don't get that. We get fire hoses, which is really unfortunate.
Any great stories of being at sea? Or something that was out of the norm for what normal day would look like?
I think, man, there's so many, nothing that just like super crazy. I've been through hurricanes. I've been through all that. I think I spoke about this not too long ago about the stars. I think having a 360-degree view with a cloudless sky at night and get to see the billions of stars in the sky is incredible. And I think it's just reoccurring. So throughout my whole career, I've literally stood up and I couldn't believe that I'm in that space doing that at that time. And then just thinking back to the old days when guys were sailing ships and that stuff without the technology and Starlink. So nothing wild that I would say that it kind of jumps out, just the everyday stuff that I've seen and done.
Amazing. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for telling your story.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's incredible.
Get a hold of me on my Instagram and I'm more than happy to help. If you've got kids that kind of want to go down a different route, I'm more than happy to get that going for them.
Sweet.
So.
But yeah, no. Listeners, check out his Instagram. We got it tagged in the notes here, or on all of our social media channels. Phenomenal follow.
Yeah, thanks.
And great guy. And yeah, dude, appreciate you being here and sharing your story.
Yeah, it's a pleasure meeting you guys. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks.
What's up, Missoula? This is Nick Balla, producer of the Missoula Podcast. We truly appreciate you hanging out with us as we dive into the stories that make our city special. If you could do us a quick favor and follow the show wherever you are listening, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, maybe you're watching on YouTube, so hit that little subscribe button. It really helps us out. Head on over to www.themissoulapodcast.com for more information, and we'll see you next week.